By the time we finished Two Towers, you know, Howard had really worked himself into the ground, as it were, you know, finishing that score, because we were delivering the film very late. I was determined not to put him through the same experience on Return of the King. I was going to try not to anyway. It's always hard to predict these things. So I suggested to Howard, look, you know, Return of the King is in a really rough shape. Why don't you come down to New Zealand and just have a look at Return of the King? We can show you what we've got, you know, months and months ahead of time.
In the first film, Howard went out, made several trips, spent a month there working on themes. Actually, more than a month. We put him up in a house. And we didn't get a chance to do that in the second film, and I think we all realized that that was something that we needed to reclaim.
There's nothing like actually seeing the film and sitting in the same theater with the filmmakers and having discussions afterwards about it.
We were quite lucky to have Howard Shore down in New Zealand, and one added benefit to that was that he was around when we were shooting some of the pickups for film 3.
He actually went on set. He had a cameo in one of the scenes.
So it's a drinking game.
Howard's just going to hum the music that he's going to compose while we're actually shooting. Miniature or a keyboard. He could sort of be playing a keyboard while we're going.
Psychologically, it was really good, I think, for Howard and for the filmmakers to have Howard come out to New Zealand, spend time, get back in the flavor of the whole thing.
You could see the size of Return of the King was just enormous. The epic scope of it was incredible, and the emotion of it was unbelievable.
There's so much going on in this film, and it is a long film in terms of number of minutes. You know, there's a lot of score. You know, maybe 80% of the film is scored. So there was a lot of material that Howard had to write for.
But he's been brilliant at working, developing themes and continuing to develop them from film to film.
And give you a taste of something, just a taste in one part of one film, and then to actually really hear the theme in earnest in the next one.
The third film is full of thematic materials that were hinted at earlier, set up particularly in Fellowship.
There's a scene in Council of Elrond where Boromir stands up and talks about his father. It's a solo French horn, and you hear what then becomes the Gondor theme and a central theme in Return of the King.
It's all about arriving at Gondor. That is the big theme in film 3. The first real great presentation of it is the lighting of the beacons.
It's a bringing together of the cultures of men to defend themselves against the forces of evil. So it's a really historic moment in Middle-earth.
It's that thing that the movie sometimes can do better than books, you know, and you're not using any words. It's music and film.
And when we heard it on the stage, we all kind of knew, yep, no more discussion here. Can we have a lot more of it, please?
To me, that was the most effective scene in some way, even though it really wasn't a scene between people, only indirectly. From Pippin's hand, you know, lighting this, and eventually Aragorn taking it in.
My feeling with Shelob was that I wanted it to feel very un-Lord of the Rings-like. I said to Howard, listen, you know, for Shelob, why don't you go back to the old Cronenberg films? Because Howard's written the music for just about everything that David Cronenberg's ever made. I said to Howard, listen, let's have some of that stuff. This should be like The Fly.
Peter wanted it to feel as if it was a film within, you know, within our film, a separate piece. Like once you entered Shelob, you were in an entirely different world.
It should be maybe a little bit more electronic sounding. Not that we'd use electronics in creating it, but we could make it sound a little bit more unearthly and not the orchestral feeling of the rest of the film.
love all that kind of brass under all this kind of screechy, scary, almost high, you know, like Hitchcock-type strings.
There's a lot of dissonance, two notes very similar in pitch being played together.
I just think it's just Howard Shorty's best, I really do. It really turns his skin.
There's something that's interesting when you're making movies, which is like playing against the expectation.
Howard had this great knack of bringing in a soloist voice, a bare voice, without the major orchestra, juxtaposed against the frenetic visual action on screen.
We'll look for the moments. There's two of them in Return of the King. There's a scene towards the end of the film where Gollum finally has the ring, and you hear the solo voice of Renee Fleming.
Aside from being an incredible artist, Renee was a lot of fun to work with. She was proud of herself. She said, well, Howard, you know, I can sing in, you know, Italian, Spanish, English, German, and now in Elvish. There's nothing that we as humans respond to better than the human voice. You don't know what it's doing to you, but I believe it has the effect of making a connection, a human connection, an emotional connection. And it makes the scene really powerful.
Home is behind, the world ahead.
Pippin's song was something that was devised while we were shooting the film. There was originally in our script no song there. It was just going to be dialogue and looks and done with the cutting and the music. But Philippa Boyens had gone out partying with the actors one night.
They decided they were going to do some karaoke, and it was at that dinner that I actually heard some of the actors singing. It was the very first time, really, that I'd heard Billy sing. I'd heard him sing the Scottish national anthem at Elijah's Thanksgiving party in Queenstown, but and I thought, wow, that's a good voice. But then when I heard him doing Delilah, I think it was, I thought, wow, this guy can really sing. I'd always wanted to use the line from the book where Denethor asks Pippin for a song.
Can you sing, Master Hobbit?
I said to Fran, do you want to do the song? What are we going to do about Billy's song? And she said, she just couldn't. She didn't have time. She said, you write something, which was really funny because I'm practically tone deaf.
Pete asked me if I could write something. And I said, well, yeah, I'll have a go. And they gave me what they wanted the words to be, which is a poem from The Fellowship.
And he said, when? And I said, well, you're shooting it tomorrow. I think it was. He had a day, maybe 2 days.
So I kind of thought about it and what type of song it would be. Looking at the words and where he is, I just thought a song that he's probably heard his grandfather sing, you know, that came from when the hobbits were looking for the Shire. So I wrote a few melodies.
He came onto the set that day and no one had heard it. And then he opened this mouth and this glorious thing came out.
Through shadows, to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Mist and shadows, cloud and shade, all shall fade. All shall fade.
And, I just finished the song and I was a bit sort of, I felt a bit naked, to be honest. And then afterwards people had told me they'd been crying and stuff, which is, kind of great to hear. That it kind of affected anyone is lovely.
And that's the way that this song was born. It was one of those ideas that really came only a matter of days before we actually shot the scene.
And we got to record it in Abbey Road Studios in London. That was just a huge highlight of my career.
Home is behind, the world ahead.
You have these performances, and so I just wrote around them, which I kind of like to do. I mean, I wrote pieces that kind of shape their vocals. In Billy's case, he's solo.
To the edge of night.
And then the orchestra comes in when you see the riders approaching Osgiliath.
Stars are all alight. Mist and shadow, cloud and shade.
Instead of, a noisy battle scene, you have the juxtaposition of this beautiful, haunting melody that Billy created and sings, and Howard supported with very simple underpinnings of orchestra growing out of it.
It's a moment in the film that builds a new respect for Pippin and gives you a shiver down your spine, and it really works.
Fran and Philippa came to me, I think it was for the Two Towers pickups around that time, and that they'd had this idea, they'd written this song, and that they wanted me to sing it and record it.
And the idea was that was going to be a piece to be created for Arwen to sing during her scene, her vision of having a child with Aragorn and confronting Elrond.
Ultimately, the scene didn't get used in Two Towers. It was one of those scenes that sort of got pushed to Return of the King, and so therefore the song got pushed with it. So when it came time to look at Return of the King, and we started really concentrating on that scene, on the song, it didn't seem like the right thing to do for the scene, because it seems strange that you're hearing Liv's voice when you're seeing her pictures and she's looking at her son. Somehow the song and what we were trying to convey with the scene didn't kind of gel.
So ultimately, for that scene, we wrote a piece called Twilight and Shadow, and that's sung by Renee Fleming.
So as a result, we had this great song sung by Liv Tyler and no place to put it in the theatrical version of the film.
And it was quite difficult for me because I'd already told a lot of people about it. So I was so embarrassed when it actually didn't end up in the film.
And it wasn't until we were getting into the extended cut that Peter and Fran realized, hey, you know what? A great place for this now is actually Houses of Healing.
With a sigh, you turn away. With a deepening heart, no more words to say. You will find that the world has changed forever.
That particular lyric line which Fran wrote, even though it was originally written for Arwen and Aragorn, it's the same thing. It is about someone who must come back from the depths of despair if they are to endure and to keep going.
It's such a great idea because it connects the two women. It connects Arwen to Éowyn, and their connection is Aragorn and their love for Aragorn.
And is also his platonic love for Éowyn. It really brought that whole story together in a very lovely way.
I think that my real dream inside of myself has always been to be a singer. So it was just, really fun, another tool for me to learn while making The Lord of the Rings.
The coronation scene, obviously, we've been building up to it. Viggo has got a powerful scene. When you open that, he sings this very emotional, natural way.
I thought, is it going to seem really weird that Aragorn basically bursts into a song?
The moment of his crowning, what are you going to stand there with a crown on your head? He wanted to do more than that, and I think it was a good instinct, and I think he did it really well.
Aragorn, just as it happens in the book, repeats the words that were spoken by his ancestor, Elendil, when he first came to Middle-earth, by saying essentially, to Middle-earth I am come, in this place will I dwell, and my heirs until the ending of time. Aragorn is acknowledging the past and making a promise for the future. in celebrating the present. And I think that's kind of what Tolkien's doing overall in his story.
The song for the end of Return of the King is very important. It's the song that sees the trilogy out. And it has to also hold the mood and the feeling and the emotion of the end of the film.
I met with Fran one day and I said, let's think about who our top artists are. You know, who would we want to work with on the last film? And Annie Lennox was on the top of both of our lists.
It was always the way that Annie can take all the trimmings away and just project this sheer emotional power, and it was something that Fran was really attracted to.
Howard got some text from Tolkien, and just to start somewhere, and created a beautiful melody called "You Swell the Days."
Round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate, and though I have passed them by, a day will come.
Peter didn't feel that that was the ending of the movie. There was a certain expression, as beautiful as it is, he said, that's not the ending piece. And I thought, okay, well, we're gonna write another one. So we started going at the writing.
A big part of the influence and the personal experience for Fran that informed the lyrics on Into the West is a young New Zealand filmmaker named Cameron Duncan, who was a friend of Peter and Fran's that they had encouraged and nurtured. And he had a terminal illness and unfortunately passed away while we were finishing Return of the King.
Dawn will turn to silver glass, a light on the water, all souls pass.
We hear a strain of Into the West in Minas Tirith, a beautiful scene with Gandalf and Pippin when they think all hope is lost.
I didn't think it would end this way.
End? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path.
And you hear the chorus of Into the West.
And it's interesting, I didn't really realize it but until like the second or third time I saw the movie, but that theme plays over pretty much any reference to death in the film. So it really becomes a very important element of the movie, or certainly became one.
Across the sea, a pale moon rises. The ships have come to carry you home. A light on the water, gray ships pass into the west.
We set out to make the best movie that we could, and to have the acclaim that it's had is just gratifying. It's amazing, really.
I'm sure when Howard Shore said yes to Lord of the Rings, you know, he probably couldn't visualize what it really meant in terms of, you know, 3 theatrical films as well as the extended cuts. And in the end, you know, it became a around the year process for him.
When I'm finished everything, you know, with the extended cut of Return of the King, it'll be 4 years. We were generating enormous amounts of material. There's close to 8,000 takes of music in the 3 recordings, you know, for the 3 films.
You know, the last day we recorded at Watford was our last day at basically the place that we did the majority of our scoring, and that was very emotional for us.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
It's everything.
That's the last time from Watford, Pete. This is it. This is our
Last time from Watford.
Watford experience in Lord of the Rings.
Goodbye to Watford, wow. That's a sort of the end of an era.
We also did a photo with the whole group and the orchestra and everybody, the whole crew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, that
yeah.
was great.
Howard doesn't want to leave Middle-earth, and I say that lovingly.
Now there's a Lord of the Rings symphony that is being played around the world by different orchestras.
The symphony project is a 2-hour piece created from the 12 hours of music created for Lord of the Rings. I think it's just fun just for the sheer joy of just playing music live without any restrictions of the timings of the film and no recording studio and there's no microphones or anything. I think doing the concert still keeps you kind of in touch with it. It keeps you sort of part of it.
He is so completely invested himself in a way that I don't know that anybody else would have. I don't know that anybody else could have, not the way that he did.
I'm not interested in it being over. In a way, I wish there was more time to do it. I mean, if you said to me, well, we had a few more years to work on Return of the King, I'd say, great.